In this section, we're going to get into flow-based Scrum. We're going to talk about how you're going to be able to take the 4D model, overlay it on Scrum, and it's just one example of how using everything that we've gone through in all of the other 55 slides so far, we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next slides. We're going to talk about the Agile Manifesto, the difference between a project and a process. We're going to look real briefly at roles. We'll just do a quick recap and review on the Scrum Guide. We're going to talk about some of the communication issues that you're going to run into, and then we're going to get into the actual Scrum format and the Scrum process. So that's, and we're going to talk a little bit about vision and things like that. By now, most of you should be familiar with the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. If you're going to be taking the certification exams, make sure you memorize these so that you have it down pat. And so basically they're talking about they're uncovering better ways of developing software. So remember, this is the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Now, you could put the word product in there because when I talk about product, I'm talking about product, service, or result. And so software can be both sold as a product, it can be sold as a solution, it can be sold as a service. Software as a service is a big one these days. But anyways, so they're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value, and here are the 4 value statements that you have for the Agile Manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And I could get into long discussions about each and every one of these, and we're not going to do that. And please note what they say here at the bottom. That is, while there's value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So that doesn't mean that there's no value to the processes or tools. It doesn't mean that we stop doing documentation. It doesn't mean that we don't have contracts anymore, and it doesn't mean that we don't do any planning. Those are total myths. Okay? So just try to shake that out of your system right now. But these are the 4 primary values of the manifesto. The next 2 slides are the 12 principles, and satisfying the customer, welcoming changing requirements, deliver working software. Business people and developers need to work together daily throughout the project, build projects around motivated individuals, and the most efficient way of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face. And then working software is the primary measure of progress. So you can read these in detail. By the way, the source on each of these slides is the agilemanifesto.org. And so feel free to look that up. And you need to know these 12 principles and the 4 values on the last slide if you're going to be taking the test. If you can memorize these, you're well on your way to being able to pass a certification test. Agile processes promote sustainable development, and you should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Remember what we said about sustainability. If you're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, that is not sustainable. You cannot maintain that pace indefinitely. You will burn out. That's just how it goes. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances your agility. And this next one is my absolutely most favorite because it is the epitome of lean thinking. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. Remember the slide on definitions where it was an 80-20 Pareto and 64% of the features were basically rarely used, never used, or only used sometimes. Well, right there, if they had done simplicity and applied this, they would have maximized the amount of work not done. They wouldn't have done the bottom half of their product backlog. They wouldn't have needed it for their marketing because the customers would have been completely satisfied with what had been delivered. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams, and at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective and then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Whole point of reviews and retrospectives. Okay, and really that they're talking about the retrospective there, but the team needs to be able to get that feedback from the customer, and they need to think about themselves. How are we performing? And this is what we call drive in the 4D model: define, distill, deliver, drive. And what's missing here is not just reflect on how to become more effective. You can have great throughput and you can be delivering the wrong thing. I've seen that at many places that have been agile for a long time, where they've got agile down. They can do agile, no problem. Mindset, well, that's another thing. They hadn't really internalized the mindset. And so without a vision driving what they're developing, they're completely missing here any reference back to, hey, do you check this against the vision, the goals, the objectives? What's our mission? What's our purpose? What are our values and attitudes? Are all these in alignment with this last one? And so this is what flow plugs, and because we emphasize vision, mission, purpose, values and attitudes, strategies, and goals and objectives, because if you've got the vision statement up there with your in your team room, and you've got the team's mission up there, and you've linked it to the organization's vision, mission, and purpose, and you've got sprint goals and objectives that are there for the team to shoot for every sprint, guess what? Eventually, you're actually going to deliver it. And that's why we reach higher levels of success with how we do Agile, because we use flow on top of Agile. And so if you've never seen Agile, you would look at it and go, wow, this makes a lot of sense. But it's not intuitively obvious. It's not what people would typically do. And we make it look effortless. We've been doing this for a long time. And so it's a lot harder than it looks, and it requires a high level of discipline. These last 2 pages, these 12 principles, take an incredible amount of discipline in order to be able to deliver them. Do not be fooled. It really takes hard work to implement this into your daily work. And so kudos to the team that came up with these 12 principles. And they should have highlighted vision, and they should have highlighted the level of discipline required to be successful, because it takes more discipline to be successful with Agile than it does to continue to mostly fail in Classic. Classic has a lot of stopgap measures built in that are there to offset and counteract the lack of discipline, both at the individual, team, and organizational levels. And so just remember, this takes a ton of discipline to do this well. As much as things change, in some ways they stay the same. Now, these days we'll talk about team instead of project, but more often than not, the teams are going to be working on something where they have a pretty clear start date and a pretty clear end date. They may or may not have all of the requirements, but they'll be looking at it and they'll be going, well, we have a good idea of what it is that we need to deliver, and we pretty much know when we need to deliver it by. And often the team has no control over contractual issues about delivery. If you look at, for example, old editions of the Scrum Guide, you'll notice that originally they talked about product, service, or result. And that pretty much aligned with the PMBOK guide from back in 2008, 4th edition, where they talked about a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So they changed the Scrum Guide later, obviously, when they found out that it was basically almost the exact same definition as in the Project Management Body of Knowledge, the PMBOK Guide from Project Management Institute. And so the only thing that's different between, or that is different between a project or teamwork these days and a product, service, or process is that the project has a clear start and end. That's the only difference. All right. They all use processes. They all have their ways of getting things done. We talk about product management, service management, process management, line management, operational management, support management, and so on. So when you're talking management processes, they still have a life cycle. There's a product life cycle from cradle to grave for product management, and the same for service management. Eventually, you're going to retire the service. But the main point is that it's important to understand that really the only differentiation between a project and all these others is that the project has a clear start and a clear end. That's about it. And now you could argue with some agile efforts that, well, there's no clear end. That could very well be, especially if you're in continuous development mode and you're maybe Amazon.com or Google, where you're doing releases continuously. And so in that sense, there's no end. But then it's actually, you're into the other where it's ongoing process. So it's interesting to see how things have stayed the same and yet how things have changed over time. In this picture, I use the 4-box that we use in the transformation slide deck extensively, and we use it in this deck as well quite a bit. And you have the 4 different boxes, the individual, team, product, and organization boxes. Scrum roles shouldn't be confused with your title in the organization. Theoretically, a CEO could also be a product owner. Okay. A program manager could also end up being a Scrum Master. So, depending on the situation and depending on the need, the roles that you have doing Agile or Scrum are pretty well delineated. In Scrum, there are only 3 roles. There's the product owner, the Scrum Master or team level facilitator, and then the developers. So those are the 3 key roles in Scrum. And in this picture, they're all the ones in green. Now, the green dot in the middle primarily represents the Scrum Master, a little bit the product owner, but primarily the Scrum Master, in that a Scrum Master should be able to work in and work with all 4 of these areas. Scrum Masters need to work with the team members individually, the teams as a team, the product owners, as well as a little bit with the organization in helping to coach the organization on best Agile practices. Now, where it starts to get a little messy is when I've added in the yellow circle. And I've tried to do these circles in such a way so that, for example, the yellow circle really touches 3 of the boxes. So an Agile coach is not a Scrum Master, but an Agile coach should do everything and can do everything that a Scrum Master would do. And basically, it's building on the competence of a Scrum Master or team level facilitator. So the Agile coach is going to work more with the product owners, with the as well as the Scrum Masters, and the Agile coaches are going to also work with the Enterprise Agile coaches, who are that outer blue circle that work primarily on the right-hand side. As I've stressed throughout this video series, product includes programs, processes. It will include people like the program managers, the line managers, business owners, product managers, all kinds of managers will be sitting in this upper right-hand corner. And this is where this corner gets a little fuzzy, because if you remember the different languages, this box speaks both the language of management and the language of leadership, which is the lower right corner. The Enterprise Agile Coach does everything that an Agile Coach and a Scrum Master can do, plus they work primarily with portfolio level and up, working with the senior and executive management and the C-level, helping them understand what it is that they need to do in order to enable and to create the culture that will enable the teams that are trying to use agile and high-speed methodologies and things like that. They need to build the culture that's going to enable that. They need to build the culture that's going to create protected environments for those teams. They need to build the culture that values the team feedback. They want to build a culture where the teams are able to freely and openly discuss with the leadership what it is that they're trying to achieve. So it's both bottom up and top down at the same time. We're going to do a quick review here of the Scrum Guide. And typically in a classroom setting, we'd have a discussion about it. We'd use post-it notes and we'd put it up on the wall under these main headers to see what people remember. What are the three main roles in Scrum? What are the 5 events? In some cases, people use the word rituals. I've recently read into a book about rituals, and it was very interesting. And it took it from a human point of view or a tribal point of view of we have these rituals all throughout our lives, and that's a cross-cultural thing. And so they were trying to emphasize the power of the ritual. And so these events or rituals, I think it's really important to think about those and what they are. But there's 5 of them in the Scrum Guide. There's a few artifacts that we produce in the process. And then most importantly here at the end is what's your definition of done, okay? So we're going to look at these on the next slide. Do you guys remember what they are? Can you think about them real quickly here? What are the 3 roles? Can you name them in your mind? Can you do the 5 events without even thinking about it? And can you name the 3 main artifacts? Well, we're going to look at this on the next slide. The 3 roles in Scrum are product owner, Scrum Master, and team. On the next slide, you'll see those are in green text, okay? And as we get further into this, we're going to look at the sprint planning, daily Scrum, the review, and the retrospective. Now, the review used to be called a demo, and it would be a demo of a potentially shippable increment of your product, service, or result. Okay, and so, but they've changed the name over to review because you're reviewing the results with your stakeholders. And then remember, the retrospective is, okay, how did we perform? How do we perform against the sprint goals? Is that getting us one step closer to the vision and mission that we're supposed to fulfill? The 3 artifacts are the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the actual incremental potentially shippable product. Okay, and then the definition of done needs to be agreed to by the team, and it creates a shared understanding of what it is that we're trying to create. a very elegant way that one of our Agile coaches was able to describe how to use the 4D model, but a slightly different way. In many organizations, the executives, they'll just inform the team members and their direct reports. They'll inform them and expect action. And you really need to break this inform act, I'll call it an anti-pattern for lack of a better word. It's really something that works against you. And I don't know why the executives do that. They inform, they issue their edicts, and they expect action. Now, that's great. But there's a whole alternate path. If you want action, and if you want to find a way to increase real conversations and the value add of those real conversations, and if you really want the teams to commit to delivering what it is you want them to deliver, that's included in the sprint goals and product backlog items and everything that's included in the sprint, here's what's got to happen. And many thanks to Bob Geist, Flow Certified Professional, Agile Coach, for distilling and drawing this picture. It was just brilliant. Instead of going straight from inform to expecting action, the executives need to understand that first, do I have understanding? Okay, are my definitions to the team clear? And if they've understood what I've communicated, do they agree with it? Okay, so that's distill agreement. Okay. Another distillation that has to happen after that is getting the commitment. And that's when the whatever level that you're working at, whether it's a portfolio or program or project or whatever, where you get the commitment is, okay, we're going to commit the people, we're going to commit the budget, and we're actually going to go deliver this. Without that commitment, they can inform and expect action all day. But if where the rubber hits the road, and in most companies that are big, that have monolithic bureaucracies, if I don't have the resources, if I don't have the people, and if I don't have the budget, you can inform me all day, but I'm not going to be able to act. It's that simple. And so if you're dealing with a large organization, this is a beautiful application of distill, deliver, of definition, distill, and deliver. And then drive would be the iterative loop coming back and double checking with the executive. Here's what you informed us. Here was the actions. Are you still in alignment with what we just did? So this is a really cool application of the 4D model in a real life project situation where we were repeatedly running into this information act anti-pattern that was really messing up the team members, the program managers, the managers who were in charge of allocating resources and budget. And so once we started walking our stakeholders through this, they went, oh, yeah, there are additional steps. We were trying to help them break that bad habit.